70 miles and a whole lot of hills. That's all that stands between Pitt and West Virginia. The two teams who share a rivalry so intense, they don't even need a shiny trophy to fight over. A loss here ruins seasons. A win validates an otherwise forgettable year, and hostility on both sides is so intense, it makes people cuss over Neil Diamond songs. This episode of Rivalries is presented by Allstate. This is the Backyard Brawl, a name that makes the game sound like your cousins stepping outside to settle their differences shirtless over by the swing set. Because, in a lot of senses, that's exactly what this game is. More than any other rivalry, this is a vibes-based game. Let's put this on Front Street. This rivalry is not about greater stakes, generally speaking. Neither team's competed for national championships in a while, and both face serious obstacles to doing so again, thanks to realignment and the ever-shifting landscape of college football. Who cares, though? The singular focus of the Backyard Brawl on the game and nothing but the game makes it, I think, a purer product than any the rest of the sport has to offer. There can be extenuating circumstances, making this even nastier and more competitive than most years. But while the ceiling may be a little bit lower for these teams, generally speaking, the floor here is so very high in terms of animosity and intensity. One way to say it, this game is old. Maybe another more flattering and appropriate way to say it is that the Backyard Brawl is unkillable. The two first played in 1895. And aside from a few skipped years here or there, the rivalry never experienced the serious feuding or decades-long breaks other major rivalries had. The Iron Bowl paused for 41 years. It took Texas and Texas A&M being in the same conference to end their 13-year break. After Pitt and West Virginia both left the Big East in 2011, they struck an agreement 4 years after that hiatus began to resume fighting each other in 2022. 100 years earlier, this game was also the first sound of American football heard over any airwaves. In 1921, station KDKA broadcast the Backyard Brawl live from Forbes Field, the home of the Pittsburgh Pirates, where the Panthers played their home games until 1924. Now, there's no audio recordings of that 21-13 Pitt win, but I assume they sounded
something like this, and use words like, what a hullabaloo full of hoop-around shenanigans we have in store for you today, dear listener.
Need a cigar or like a fedora on. What everyone definitely heard was a game between two teams whose very identities inevitably made this a great rivalry from the jump. The two were close, separated by just 75 miles of hills and hollers, but different enough to draw clear lines between them. Pitt represented the industrial brawn of the city of Pittsburgh, while West Virginia brought all of Appalachia along with them. The rivalry has a clear underdog and overdog? Is that a word? A favorite. Never mind, just roll with it. Pitt has dominated most of the rivalry based on their sheer size and proximity to the rest of talent-rich Pennsylvania. When West Virginia either upset them or closed the gap later on, and they did so through mountain ingenuity, shrewd recruiting, and a willingness to boldly experiment with what we even thought football should look like at all.
White keeps it. Gets around the corner, has a brace, Pat White.
Even their mascots line up beautifully. On one side, there's a hunter with a rifle. On the other, there's an alpha predator capable of eating people. I'm not saying you're in mortal danger standing between the two sides in this game. Then again, it's not a chance you want to take, is it? Just get end zone seats just to be safe. Best moments. 1952. We establish an important pattern in this rivalry. One team absolutely ruining another's season just for fun. Prior to this game, West Virginia had never beaten a ranked team. In a 16-0 skunking, guess who gave the Mountaineers their first one? It had to be Pitt. It simply had to be. 1955, we continue a fine tradition by West Virginia getting their 7-0 season torched by a Pitt team. The loss cost the Mountaineers a Sugar Bowl bid. That precious invitation to one of college football's mere 7 bowl games at the time went instead to, yeah, you got it, Pitt. 1961. Don't feel too bad about poor West Virginia. 6 years later, an eventual 4-6 Mountaineers team upset Pitt 20-6 at home after a Panthers player said West Virginia was stocking its program with, and I quote, Western Pennsylvania garbage, unquote. 1970. The Mountaineers blow a 35-8 halftime lead when Pitt runs the entire second half out of the power I on offense.
And who would believe it? West Virginia leading 35-8 at halftime. It's all over. The final score is Pitt 36, West Virginia 35.
After the game, their rookie head coach can hear Mountaineers fans pounding on the locker room door. That coach was Bobby Bowden. Mountaineers fans, for at least a minute, had one of the best coaches of all time bunkered into his own locker room. 1976, Tony Dorsett accomplishes the rare feat of both running for 199 yards and 3 TDs in a rivalry game win for Pitt and being thrown out of that same game in a bench-clearing brawl.
And there's a little fight going on down on the field right now, and now everybody's punching and slugging. I hate to see that at the end of a great game like this.
Yeah, I hate to see it literally turn into a backyard brawl.
Hi, I know we're moving fast, but this may be the bitterest loss any rival has ever handed anyone ever in the history of college football. I'm not exaggerating. It's bad. In the 100th edition of the Brawl, a 4-7 Pitt team came in as a 28-point underdog and stultified the dynamic West Virginia run game, handing the number 2 Mountaineers a loss that knocked them out of national championship contention and became known simply by its infamous final score, 13-9. Owen Schmidt, fullback for the Mountaineers, put it this way: "We blew it against the shittiest fucking team in the fucking world." His words, not mine. 2022, the first game after an 11-year hiatus. Oh, it just featured 7 lead changes decided on a late pick 6 for Pitt by MJ Devonshire. That's all, just standard backyard brawl stuff. In that 2007 upset, LeSean McCoy absolutely shook a man out of his shoes for a touchdown.
Nothing downfield has worked. McCoy. What a move! Are you kidding? Touchdown! What a play!
Only problem? It didn't count. It was called back for a questionable hold that had Dave Wanstead livid on the sidelines. McCoy still ended up with 38 carries for 148 yards in this one. Nothing worked offensively for either team in a low-scoring rock fight of a game. So McCoy's ability to eat clock and keep Pat White, Steve Slayton, and Noel Devine on the sideline and Pitt's defense fresh made all the difference in the end. It's not pretty or spectacular, but frankly, that sounds more on brand for Pitt football than anything else. A blue-collar performance. A gritty game. I said that line in all caps. I hope you can hear it. The next one's about the journey. In the 1983 Backyard Brawl, 90 yards and a stingy Pitt defense stood between West Virginia's Jeff Hostetler and the end zone. Trailing in the fourth quarter, Hostetler led the Mountaineers across every single one of those yards and in for a bootleg score as West Virginia claimed a 24-21 win. It was their first win over Pitt since 1975. Since that moment, West Virginia's led the series by an 18-10-2 margin. Let's ask some important questions. Does your rivalry involve one team burning couches to celebrate a win? Do those same fans celebrate every win by playing Sweet Caroline, a song Pitt loves, and that West Virginia tries to ruin by yelling "Eat Pitt" on the bump, bump, bump? No, it doesn't. I bet your rivalry even has a trophy, like an oar or a giant bronze pig or something. The Backyard Brawl doesn't need one. Winning is enough, and at least the relief of not losing to the one rival both teams really care deeply about beating. That alone gives the game its own hallowed spot in the college football heavens. It's the only game where the game itself is its own trophy.